Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to the penultimate race weekend of 2023 and the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix weekend. We are at the beginning of a new Grand Prix on the calendar that whether we like it or not, we're going to have to get used to it because it's going to be on the calendar for quite a while, I feel. And it's already been quite memorable, I would say, so far, this event. As you can see pictures on screen from the opening ceremony, if I can speak English, that took place nearly 24 hours ago, which thankfully I did not have to watch, and I was preoccupied with other things. But yeah, here we are. Let's see if a Grand Prix in Las Vegas will actually deliver the excitement, entertainment, whatever you want to call it, that we really crave in Formula One. Fingers crossed it will. Obviously, the conditions of the weekend is going to make things interesting, with the track temperatures being very cold. The tyres are going to be the three softest compounds possible, so maybe that will make the race weekend even more exciting. We'll have to see when we get into the actual weekend and the sessions itself. But what we're going to be doing in this weekend preview is looking at the new track and trying to understand, in terms of the layout we have here in Las Vegas, how maybe it might be similar to certain tracks we already have on the calendar, just to try and get a decent idea as to what is actually going to happen this weekend. Of course, I'll get into my predictions going to the weekend, which I have to be honest, going into this particular Grand Prix, probably not going to be that reliable because it's the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix. So yeah, don't take them too seriously. And then we'll go through the teams one by one and get into how I think they'll do this weekend, and also with the teams touch on some pieces of news to do with certain teams as well. Hope you guys are well after a couple week break since the last Grand Prix. And yeah, two more races to go, and then that's it. This weekend, Vegas, and then next weekend, we're racing in Abu Dhabi, and then it's all over. It's the second half of the season, which has been, I'd say, decent, if not good, I think you could probably call it. It has flown by very quickly. It felt like we were, the summer break felt like it was maybe a month ago in terms of how close. To me, it still feels like it was when, what, 3 months ago now. So yeah, the last few races have just absolutely flown by, and the improvement of the racing definitely has helped that, which is good to see. And maybe this Grand Prix will continue in the vein of form of the last few races, which have been not great races, but decent to good races on a more so consistent basis. We'll see when we get into the Grand Prix on Sunday. But yeah, I hope you guys are well, and no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hope you're all having as best a time as possible, and you'll be joining me tonight in previewing the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix. There's a poll running, of course, in the live chat. I've asked you guys who you think will most likely challenge Red Bull this weekend at the first ever Vegas Grand Prix. Let me know, out of the four teams I've put in that poll, who you think is most likely to put up a fight against the Red Bull team. But and obviously, as usual, make sure to post your comments, your thoughts going into this Las Vegas Grand Prix. And as I will touch on later, I am going to be very busy during this Grand Prix weekend because, of course, it's the first ever race here. I am going to be doing a watch along for every single session, meaning that yes, in a few hours from now, after this stream finishes, I'll be live again for the watch along of practice 1 and then later practice 2. And then, of course, Saturday, practice 3 and qualifying, Sunday, the race as well. And I'll be doing a qualifying preview on Friday night. So plenty of content between now and Sunday morning when the race is. Plenty of content coming your way in the next, was it 2.5 days? Something like that. So, yeah, make sure to keep posted because we've got plenty of stuff coming your way on the channel. So let's get into it. And what we'll do is we will start, before we go into any, business about this particular Grand Prix, let's get into the championship standings, shall we? And here are the drivers' standings after the last Grand Prix in Brazil. Max Verstappen, of course, the champion, and nearly 300 points clear now of Sergio Perez. I don't think anyone has won the title before by a gap of 300 points, so it would be interesting to see if Max could get it up to 300 plus points. Perez second, you'd imagine he will finish in second, 32 points clear now of Hamilton plus Mercedes, pretty dire in Brazil. And who knows whether that form will continue here. Probably not. But yeah, I think Perez will hold on to second now. Hamilton third. Alonso back up to fourth after an amazing podium in Brazil. I would be surprised, though, if he held on to fourth in the championship, because I think the Aston Martin won't be able to keep up that level of performance that we saw in Brazil for at least this Grand Prix, and probably the last Grand Prix of the season as well. Lando Norris just behind in fifth, and the same with Carlos Sainz, not too far behind in sixth. Charles Leclerc seventh. Of course, he retired from the last Grand Prix. George Russell did as well, and he is in eighth place and is 70 points behind Lewis Hamilton. Just indicating there how poor of a season it's been for Russell, because of course last year he beat Lewis Hamilton by, what was it, 20 points, 30 points, something like that. So yeah, it just shows you how bad of a year it's been for him. Oscar Piastri in ninth. Piastri has not scored that many points in the last few races. Since the Qatar Grand Prix, he's only scored, I think, how many points? 4 points. Of course, the last couple tracks he's been to, he's never, had an experience around. So, of course, we'd be able to cut him some slack. But yeah, it's not been a great last couple weeks for Piastri, but I'm sure he will be a lot stronger in these final couple races. And Lance Stroll, after a brilliant fifth place finish for him in Brazil, he is back into the top 10 of the championship, but he is only 1 point clear of Pierre Gasly, who's having a pretty good season in the Alpine. And then on the constructors' side, Red Bull officially 400 points clear of Mercedes, and then Mercedes only 20 points clear of Ferrari, and that battle still rages on. I think going into these final couple races, I think Ferrari are looking like maybe the slight favourites to take second place away from Mercedes. A big reason for that is in qualifying, Ferrari at the minute have been consistently a lot more quicker than the Mercedes team. And just in general, in the second half of the season, Ferrari have been in better form. And looking at the layout of this track and the Abu Dhabi one, yeah, I could see Ferrari finishing second in the championship. It will be very close, though, no doubt about it. McLaren in fourth. Of course, they're going to be heading for fourth. There's no way they're going to catch the teams ahead. I don't think mathematically even it's really possible, or realistically possible at this point. Aston Martin did actually close the gap to McLaren after the last Grand Prix. They're only 21 points behind, so you never know. McLaren have a really bad final couple races and Aston Martin get back on the pace like they did in Brazil, then you never know what could happen. And then you've got Alpine in sixth, Williams in seventh, only 7 points clear now of AlphaTauri, who are one of the most informed teams on the grid. Alfa Romeo in ninth and Haas in 10th. Alfa Romeo and Haas, I think, will definitely finish ninth and 10th in the championship. I don't see them making any progress. And certainly Haas, I don't see them making any progress from that position. So, let's get into the track itself. And here you can see the circuit. Now, if you look at the little line, there's 3 of them around the track to indicate the end of each sector. So, yeah, with Sector 1, it's a decent sector. The first couple corners have got a nice flow to it. The only reason I'm able to comment on that is purely because of my experience of the track on the F1 game. Of course, it's going to be different to a certain degree in real life. But yeah, the first couple corners has a nice flow to it, and then you're flat out with DRS down to a 90-degree right-hander, and then that is the first sector done with. So first sector, especially with you coming off of the final real corner to start the lap with such speed, really the first sector is testing all of the things of your car, straight line speed, high speed performance through the high speed corners, and also the slower speed performance in the slow corners. And then sector 2 gets very Mickey Mouse. Lots of slow corners, very reminiscent of Baku in certain instances, and also has a bit of a Singapore feel to it, certain parts of the middle sector. And then you come to, I think, a 90-degree left-hander, and then you start the mammoth DRS zone, the second DRS zone of this track, which it starts at the very end of the middle sector and then goes into the final sector. And you are flat out for so long in that part of the lap, and then finally when you brake for the, as you can see down the bottom right of the track layout, you have a couple final corners, basically a chicane towards the end of the lap, and towards the exit of that chicane you are basically flat out, then flat out towards the line. So the second half of the lap you are basically just flat out, and that's why in my view this track will favor teams that do have good straight line speed. But I think because of what is in the first, say, 40% of the lap, or maybe even first half of the lap, you could argue, you're not just going to be able to rely on having great straight line speed to be quick here. And plus, with the track temperatures being as cold as they're going to be, managing that well enough will also play quite a role this weekend. So in terms of predicting what's going to happen, it is very hard to do so for anyone. So I don't expect anybody out there who is daring to make a prediction for this Grand Prix. I don't expect anyone to actually come up with one that's probably going to happen, because I think we're all really going into the unknown at this particular race. But I have done an initial qualifying and race prediction, and the predictions I've done in terms of who I think will be quick here and not so quick, in my mind, I'm comparing this track also to Baku. I know it's not, exactly similar to Baku, but it does have certain similarities. For example, the final sector being as flat out as it is, very similar to Baku. The only difference is in the final sector here in Vegas, you do actually have to brake, but in the final sector in Baku, you're completely flat out. But it is similar. The first sector, to be honest, the first sector, it kind of reminds me, at this track, the first sector, it kind of reminds me of a street circuit version of the first sector of the Catalonia track, with the way the first couple corners are. It's not quite the same, not as long the corners here in the first sector as it is in the first sector Catalonia, but it is kind of reminiscent of that in terms of the flow of the first couple corners. But again, not as long the corners, and also a lot tighter the track than it is in Barcelona. So yeah, the first sector kind of reminds me of that. And the middle sector, again, doesn't have as many corners as the middle sector in Baku, but it does remind me in certain ways of that middle sector in Baku in terms of the type of car you need to be quick at this type of track. So I've gone for my predictions. To be honest, they're really just guesstimates. So let's get into them, and we'll see eventually whether these predictions turn out to be half true, mostly true, 99% true. We will see. So let me get into my qualifying prediction. So because of the importance of top speed, I think, that will definitely show itself during this Grand Prix. That's why I have gone for the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc to take pole position, just about from the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Perez. Sergio Perez, by the way, I do fancy to have quite a stronger weekend than what we've normally seen in the second half of this season, because looking at this track, it does look like a track that Sergio Perez, should be good at. In terms of the tightness of the circuit and the flow, again, has similarities to Baku. You could even say at times has similarities to the Jeddah circuit in Saudi Arabia. So I expect Perez to be pretty strong as well. But I do think Ferrari will take pole position because of that final sector, it being so flat out. That will help them so much. Of course, Red Bull very quick down the straights, but Ferrari just a tad better in that particular area. But it will be very close between Ferrari and Red Bull in the fight for pole. Carlos Sainz, I'm going in fourth. And then the two McLarens I'm going for next in Norris and Piastri. McLaren, I don't think are going to be super quick here in qualifying, mainly because of the lack of straight line speed they will have in the second half of the lap. But they're still going to be decently quick. They're not going to be slow or anything like that. Lewis Hamilton, 7th. I don't think Mercedes will be quick here. I think this type of track is, in terms of the layout, I think it's one of the worst type of circuits, really, that Mercedes, for the Mercedes car. I just don't think it's a track, really, that they're going to like. So, yeah. I know there are, a few slow corners here and there, but with the second half of the lap being so flat out, and also the track temperature situation, I just don't fancy them to really get on top of that and have a good weekend. So yeah, I'm going 7th for Hamilton in qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going 8th in the AlphaTauri. The AlphaTauri much quicker with this part of the season than it was back in the early part of the season when we were in Baku. Fernando Alonso, I'm going to go in 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda in P10. You may be wondering, why have I not gone for a Williams in the top 10, given how flat out the final sector is? Reason that is because I think Williams, as I'll get onto later, will struggle with track temperature. And in the first half of the lap, I don't think Williams are going to be that quick at all. Plus, AlphaTauri have improved a lot on their straight line speed and just general downforce. So yeah, that's how I think the pace will be and the positions will be in the top 10. And then for the race, by the way, will be 50 laps on Sunday. This is what I've gone for the race. Max Verstappen to win yet again and take what would be his 18th win of the season. Sergio Perez finishing second, completing a Red Bull 1-2. And then Charles Leclerc in third, Lando Norris in fourth, Carlos Sainz fifth, Oscar Piastri in sixth, Lewis Hamilton 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th, Daniel Ricciardo 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda in P10. Yeah, compared to qualifying, I don't expect an absolute ton of overtaking. There will be overtaking. It's not going to be impossible at this track, but I don't think it's going to be as much as what Liberty Media are hoping for. Going back to this, though, so yeah, I just want to quickly get into what I believe the pecking order will be around this track. So in qualifying, Ferrari and Red Bull, I think, definitely will be the two quickest teams. Third quickest, McLaren. Fourth quickest, I'd probably go, Mercedes. And then fifth quickest, probably just about AlphaTauri, but it's going to be very close, I think, between AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, to a degree Williams as well. And it's really from a fifth best team down, it's going to be pretty close, I think, through the rest of the field. But I'll go AlphaTauri 5th, Aston Martin 6th, and then probably, it's hard to say, Williams or Alpine in 7th. Let's say Williams 7th, Alpine 8th, and then Alfa Romeo 9th, and Haas in 10th. But like I said, really from AlphaTauri, who I think will be the 5th best team this weekend, down to the slowest team, whoever that is, I think it will be pretty close. But for the top 4 teams in qualifying, Ferrari and Red Bull, I think will be definitely very close to one another, and the two quickest teams. And then, yeah, McLaren third quickest, Mercedes fourth quickest. That's definitely what I believe will be the case this weekend. We'll see, of course, in practice whether we see any initial signs of that. But this track, will it end up producing good enough racing? Again, hard to say. We don't know how much effect the low track temperatures are going to have in terms of how the cars will be drivability wise around this circuit. So we'll have to see how that plays out and whether that can maybe make the cars a lot harder to drive. But I think again it's going to be similar to what we see in Baku, where in Baku overtaking is possible. It's not impossible to overtake. It's just the flow of Baku is not very good, which is not conducive to natural good racing. And I think that's what we're going to see here. Probably not as bad as what we normally see in Baku. Because in Baku, the only way you can get a good race is if you have a safety car. You can't have a good race in Baku with no safety cars. It's literally impossible. I think with this track, it's a lot more possible, but I think still there is the risk that we could see if we have, a race on Sunday, 50-lap race on Sunday where there's no safety cars or anything, where we don't get, a lot of really anything happening after, say, the first, 10 laps of the race. So, yeah. We'll have to see on Sunday how things play out. And initially in practice, how the track temperature thing is affecting the cars and the drivers. As well, with this track, the expected lap time is 1 minute and 30 seconds-ish, it should be, for this track. So, not going to be anywhere near as long as a track like Baku. It is still, though, quite a long track compared to a lot of the other circuits on the calendar. So, it is still one of the longer circuits we do have. But we'll see what happens with this track, whether it does produce a Grand Prix weekend that is, properly exciting. I hope it does, but I will admit I don't have a good feeling about this track. Maybe it's just me being pessimistic, I don't know, but I just don't have a great feeling about the track overall. But let's go back to these pictures and let's get into some of the teams before I come to you guys in the chat. Make sure to let me know in the chat, guys. Do you think with that track layout, do you think that is a good enough layout to see us have a properly good race on Sunday? Or not even on Sunday, but just in general. Do you think that track layout is good enough? And how do you think the weekend will go? Who do you expect to be quick around that type of layout? Let me know in the chat and I'll get to your comments in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. But let's start with the Red Bull team, who come to this Grand Prix on the back of yet another win. And, of course, in the last couple years, this team have tremendous success in America. They have won every single Grand Prix held in America since 2021. And they're looking this weekend for their sixth win in a row in America. And it would be sixth win in a row with Max Verstappen as well. Quite incredible to have such a strong record like that. And unless qualifying goes, disastrously wrong, I don't see them really having that difficult of a weekend. The only team I think really on pure pace that can properly trouble them is Ferrari. But at least Red Bull know that if Ferrari are their closest competitors in qualifying, that if they can make sure to get at least a car into second place, then they still have a great chance to win the race on Sunday because of the obvious, differences in race pace between the Red Bull and Ferrari cars. So, yeah, I think Red Bull will be fine. Sergio Perez, man on screen, I think will have a stronger weekend than what we've normally seen in the second half of this season, and that will, I think, contribute well to him basically securing his seat for 2024. And as I said earlier, this track, when you look at it, it does look like a Sergio Perez-ish track. Just a track that get the feeling that he will be good around. It is similar, again, to certain other tracks that he has been very strong at. So, yeah, both Red Bull drivers should be pretty strong, and I think in the end, they will take a 1-2 finish. Won't be by a country mile, still be close-ish, but ultimately, Red Bull still will be too good. One thing I do want to get into, though, before we move on to the other teams, is there's been a bit of talk, discussion, I guess you could say, about Max Verstappen's comments about the Las Vegas Grand Prix that he's already made. And he came out with the quote of, that this Grand Prix this weekend is 99% show, 1% sport, or something like that. And it's been quite critical of just, the the importance put on the show rather than what's going to be going down on track. I've also had a couple other drivers be a bit frustrated about how over the top already this Grand Prix event has been. Obviously, we had the opening ceremony. What was it? Basically, last night, Vegas. And from what I heard from a couple of you guys who commented on my post, I think, about the content that I was going to post for this weekend's Grand Prix, I think a couple of you were saying about how bad it was, and thankfully, because I was preoccupied with something else, which I'll get into in a second, I didn't pay attention to it, and I didn't even know, to be honest, it was going on. So yeah, thankfully I missed it. But what he's saying is true. It's, this particular Grand Prix really is all about the show. It's not really about what happens on track. Liberty, I think, know that probably the race we're going to get on track is not going to be that great. And I don't think really they care if the Grand Prix on track is that good or not. Obviously, it's a bonus for them if it is good. But I think they're purely focusing on, the off the track stuff and making it as, I don't know, as interactive, an event as they can, or especially a lot of corporate people who are attending the event, and of course they're trying to get as much money as they can out of the event itself. And like I said, I don't think they really care that much if Grand Prix on the Sunday is not very good. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I just find it interesting that there's been a bit more talk about Max Verstappen and what he's had to say, because we know Max is a very honest, brutally honest person, which I like. But I don't understand why people are getting a bit too, not offended, but I don't understand why people are discussing it as much as they are, because it's not like what Max has said the last day or so is a surprise. I mean, we've heard him be very critical of the sprint races, other things in Formula One, which he has every right to, to criticize. But there was a tweet that I saw from an F1 YouTuber, not a real life YouTuber when I say real life YouTuber, I mean someone who covers F1 in real life. It was an F1 YouTuber for the F1 game, Alex Gillen, is it? I saw a tweet from him saying it was something like that, it is fine that Max has an opinion, but as the world champion of F1, he shouldn't really be saying this, because he is the champion, and he has some responsibility, which I think is complete bullshit. Max Verstappen has no responsibility for Formula One and he doesn't have any responsibility for how popular Formula One, you know, is or may become in the future. He's not employed by Formula One. He competes in Formula One, but he's not employed by Formula One. He's employed by a racing team to race in F1. That's it. All he is a racing driver. He's not, it's not the job of an F1 driver to also market the sport. That's what you have, marketers for, and that's what Liberty Media's job essentially is. So I don't understand why, he said that in terms of, Max shouldn't be saying that because he has this responsibility. I don't think he does at all, and rightfully doesn't. If he thinks something is shit, he should be allowed to say that it is shit. And that is basically, what he said. And I just thought that comment was very um, naive and just pretty stupid, to be honest. And at the end of the day, and this goes for anyone, I would rather someone be honest with what they said. Even if what they said was bad, I would rather you be honest, because at least then I know where you're coming from and what your actual position is. The one thing I absolutely despise, especially in sports, is athletes coming out and saying things and you just know it's complete PR bullshit and they don't think it at all. They're just saying it to please sponsors, whatever employer they have, and all the rest of it. So it's refreshing to see that Max Verstappen, comes out and says, yeah, the opening ceremony was, was cringe, basically. And that's pretty much why I didn't watch it. I can tell you why, by the way, I didn't watch it. One was legitimately because I didn't know it was on at that time. I thought it was going to be on later in the weekend. But also, and I may as well just quickly announce this, my Twitter account has been permanently suspended. I don't know why. According to Twitter, it's for multiple violations of their rules. Again, I don't know what the rules are. I have maybe a slight idea as to why, but yeah, I have no idea really. No proper idea really why I have been banned from Twitter. So yeah. I am allowed still, to view Twitter. I have I still have ways around, being banned. I'm still able to view things on Twitter. They put my account in, what was it? Permanent read only mode, which isn't as glamorous as it sounds because you can't really read that much. But yeah, just want to update you guys as to that. If you were following me on Twitter, yeah, there won't be any more Twitter content from me because I've been banned from Twitter for, again, no good reason, at least. Yeah, thankfully I didn't watch what happened last night with the, the driver introductions and Kylie Minogue there, and who else, I don't even know who else was there. Yeah, thank God I didn't watch it because I don't think I would have lasted. And from the sounds of it, the drivers didn't really enjoy it either. But yeah, let me know what you think of all of that Max Verstappen stuff. Whether you think, he does have any responsibility for, in terms of speaking out and sharing his view on certain things in F1 being good or not so good. Let me know in the chat what you think of that. But let's go on to the other teams. Mercedes-Benz had a horror show in Brazil, and I don't think it's going to get much better here. As I said earlier, this track I don't think really is going to suit their car. Even though there is some slow corners here and there, I just don't think this is the type of track where Mercedes are going to be competitive. I think if you look at really the last couple of years, they have had issues, Mercedes, with colder track temperatures, and that has at times cost them quite dearly. And also with Mercedes, they don't have a very aerodynamically efficient car at high speed. And obviously the second half of the lap is very high speed. So that's why I don't think Mercedes will be competitive. And that's why, as you saw in my prediction, I don't think George Russell is going to be in the top 10 in qualifying or the race. I just don't think Mercedes are going to be competitive here. I think Lewis Hamilton will be in the top 10 because he's performing at a much higher level than Russell is, but it's going to be a difficult weekend for them. I would be very pleased to be proven wrong on Mercedes, what I think their performance will be this weekend, because in general I just don't have a good feeling about what their weekend is going to be. And definitely coming out of Brazil, I think they're going to be very tentative this weekend, especially with the way they set the car up and their confidence really on track, because surely that last Grand Prix in Brazil has absolutely smashed their confidence, because it was, as Toto Wolff said, as I said, it was the worst Grand Prix they've had since they came back into the sport as a works team. It was that bad, and could have been worse, probably should have been worse, had it not been for a couple drivers retiring or ending up a lap down, such as Ricciardo and Piastri. So yeah, could have been a lot worse for the team, and I don't think it's going to be too much better here in Vegas. Let me go on to the next team, which is the Scuderia Ferrari team, and you can see here Leclerc and Sainz. By the way, these I think special Ferrari hoodies, I think it is. I actually like them quite a bit. I think they look quite nice. I think yeah, if they do properly go on sale, then wouldn't be surprised if they sold out quite a bit for Ferrari. But yeah, for this weekend, I think we will see a much stronger performance than we saw in Brazil. I don't really understand a lot about why they were so poor in Brazil. I mean, they were on the front row of the grid until Leclerc had his issue in formation lap, where he had a hydraulic failure, and ended up spinning and basically crashing out of the formation lap and out of the race, basically. But the general pace of the car was a lot slower than I expected. I thought they would have been really the second best team through that weekend, and they weren't even the third best team in Brazil. They, were in the race, they were comfortably slower than Red Bull, McLaren, and Aston Martin. And Aston Martin have not been faster than Ferrari since probably the Dutch Grand Prix earlier this season in Zandvoort. It's been quite a while since we've seen Aston Martin quicker than Ferrari. Or maybe you could say Qatar, but I mean, in the race, Ferrari ended up being faster. But yeah, it was an unusual weekend. I don't know if it's because they didn't quite get the setup right, because it's sprint weekend. Of course, on a sprint weekend, you don't have as much time to get the setup right. So I don't know if that played a role, but yeah, it was definitely a disappointing event in Brazil. But I think they'll bounce back here. Track layout, I think, suits their car well, especially in the second half of the lap. Charles Leclerc, we know, very good at street circuits, and so is Carlos Sainz. So the two drivers should be performing at about or around about the best that we normally see with the two drivers. So if the car is as good as I think it will be, there's no reason why they can't be on pole position for the race on Sunday. Winning the race, though, I think will depend on chaos, really, and chaos that obviously does not involve them. But yeah, they can get pole position and the car is as quick as I believe it can be, then that would be, and if they were to get the result that I predicted for the race, which I think was third and fifth, that's a pretty good result, 25 points. That, especially when you consider the battle they're having with Mercedes in the championship, that would pretty much put them level on points going into the final race. So, yeah, I think what do you call it? I am confident with this team this weekend. Maybe they'll shatter it once again, like they did in Brazil. But I've got a good feeling about Ferrari this weekend, especially with this man at the wheel, who, even though he was struck with bad luck in the during the formation lap, let's remember Leclerc has been in very good form in the last few races. Let's now go on to McLaren. And yeah, what a race they had in Brazil a couple of weeks ago. Way quicker, and even McLaren and Lando Norris were saying they were way quicker than they expected. Can they keep that up here in Vegas? There's no reason why they can't. I'd love it if they were right up there again with Red Bull. It would be great to see, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll be the third best team in qualifying. In the race, I think they'll probably have on pure pace the second quickest car, but because of them having a poorer track position, won't be able to outscore Ferrari. But I think really in the race, Ferrari will be McLaren's main opposition this weekend, and I think definitely will be the fastest Mercedes powered team, because let's be honest, guys, since the summer break, except for a couple races, McLaren have been the quickest Mercedes powered team. Again, there's only been a couple races where that's not been the case. Monza was an example. Where else? Maybe Mexico, you could argue, but you didn't really get to see what Lando Norris's true pace was like, so you never know what could have happened there. But yeah, really, since the summer break, McLaren have been regularly quicker than Mercedes, and not just quicker than Mercedes, they've been trading blows with Ferrari as the second best team to Red Bull in the second half of this season. So there's no reason why they can't be easily one of the top three teams here in Vegas. And thankfully for Oscar Piastri, he is not at a disadvantage this weekend because obviously new track for everyone. So he will be learning just like everybody and should be back on the pace that we saw, a few weeks ago back in Qatar, Suzuka, where he's very close to his teammate, maybe even will be faster just about than his teammate, at least in qualifying. I'll have to say. But I've got a decent feeling about McLaren. Not quite sure they've got enough for a podium here in Vegas, but I think they'll have a decent pace this weekend and an overall decent weekend. And the final team we'll go on to before I come to you guys in the chat to read out some comments is Aston Martin. And yeah, in Brazil, they were very competitive, and bravo to them. The setup of the car, they got absolutely bang on. And one piece of information that I found out after the Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend that I wish I had known during that weekend, I found out some information as to why Aston Martin were as quick as they were in Brazil. And according to Ted Kravitz, the reason they were so quick is because they took some of the upgrades off the car that they put on in the last, say, 3-4 months and basically went back to what the car was like in the first 3 months of the season. And if that is true, then clearly it worked. So we might see if Aston Martin continue with that setup of not having any of the new parts on the car, we might see Aston Martin really strong again. It could happen. So, we'll see what happens with that. Until I'm proven on that as to, if Aston Martin have got good pace, I still am going to go with the prediction I've gone for. 9th for Alonso in qualifying and 8th in the race, which wouldn't be that bad of a result necessarily, but it would be, given how their form has been in the second half of the season, it'd be realistic, really, that position for, what their general pace has been in the last couple months. But if that is true, that they went back to how the car was before a load of these upgrades, which maybe made the car worse, then maybe in these last couple weeks of the season, Aston Martin can get back to the pace we saw earlier in the season and maybe, just maybe, push back at McLaren for 4th in the championship. We will see what happens. But yeah, Alonso definitely should be quicker than Stroll. Good to see, by the way, Lance Stroll having a much stronger weekend in Brazil. That was his best weekend of the season. It was for Stroll. Still wasn't maybe as great in certain parts of the weekend as maybe it could have been, but overall he did, I think, really, considering the season he's had and the talent he has, I think he did really the best he could in Brazil. So yeah, good to see him in a bit better form than what we've seen for much of this season. But before I go on to the other teams, I just want to come to you guys in the chat to see what you guys having to say about this Grand Prix. Before I do, though, just want to quickly plug my next two pieces of content. So, guys, in a few hours' time, at 4:15 a.m. UK time, I will be live for the Practice 1 watch along, where we're going to just get into the session, watch along, see what happens, get a feel for how the cars handle around the Vegas track, and just get a visual introduction to what we can expect for this weekend. And then, after that stream finishes at 5:45, I'll be live again 2 hours later at 7:45 a.m. UK time tomorrow morning for the Practice 2 watch along. And that will be the most interesting session, because even though all the sessions this weekend are taking place at night, Practice 2 takes place during the same part of the day that qualifying will be taking place, which is quite late in the day. Qualifying, for example, in Vegas will be taking place on a Friday night at midnight in Vegas. Of course, they are, 8 hours behind us here in the UK. And obviously, this weekend in Vegas, practice is on a Thursday, qualifying is on a Friday, and the race is on a Saturday. But for us, it is the normal weekend in terms of it being on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday, if that makes any sense. But yeah, in a few hours' time, I will be live for the Practice 1 watch along and then the Practice 2 watch along. So make sure to come along to that and see what happens in the beginnings of this Grand Prix, this new Grand Prix event. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, because we do watch alongs for qualifying, races, previews, reviews, and we cover every Grand Prix here on the channel. And we do plenty of content in general, keeping you bang up to date with everything going on in Formula One. Yeah, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for this channel. And for everybody watching right now, make sure to smash that like button. We are currently on 13 likes. We can definitely get more likes than that. Let's try and get, let's say 20 to 25 plus likes on this stream. That'd be great if we could. Yeah. And as well, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat where I've asked you guys who is most likely to challenge Red Bull at this weekend's Las Vegas Grand Prix. Let me know in that poll who you think is most likely. But yeah, let's get into some of your comments, and then I'm going to whiz through the final few teams, and then we'll get to the end of this preview. There's one thing I do need to get before the what do you call it? The practice watch-alongs later. I do need to get some sleep, because I've not had a ton of sleep in the last 24 hours. Hello to everyone, by the way. Nib earlier was in chat saying second half of the season definitely been better than the first half. Definitely. Ottomaya Parker says, I loved F1 because Americans hadn't took it over. Now it's so Americanized, I'm not that interested anymore. Lol. I understand what you mean. The problem with Americanization is not Americanization in terms of, American type of ways of doing things. The problem is, if you get a series took over by an American company and it gets Americanized, you're going to get some of the good things that you get with that, but you're also going to get a lot of the bad things about, say, that capitalist culture. And I'm not like an anti-capitalist or anything, but in terms of the way, certain American corporations run their businesses, it's not exactly um, the best way in terms of how best to describe this. I feel with American companies also that the product is more so neglected in certain instances. Not all instances. There's plenty of American companies, I'm sure, where their product is not neglected by, whatever business practices or just how they run things. But I do feel with F1 that the product has and is suffering because of the way it's being run from a more, financial, operational standpoint. And yeah, I totally understand if people don't like, Americanization in general. Herman the Tosser asking, is the race on Saturday? Technically, yes, it is on Saturday, but it's only on Saturday for, for people, North and South America, I think. Darthold Raven, hey Jezza, how are you? I'm good. Have you seen the last showdown? 9 people against Charles Leclerc in simulators. Of course, he won. Will he have any benefit in real life? Probably not. But I have not seen the Las Vegas showdown, so yeah, I'll try and give that a watch if I can when I've got time. Furthermore, saying, "Hey guys, running CNC routers and watching Nazar HD. Not, I expect you to know what that is. No, I don't know. Gravel saying, shouldn't the cars that suffer from high tire heat in normal weather do better at Las Vegas? I'm wondering if they'll be more competitive because of it. Yeah, I see you thinking, and I am kind of on that similar wavelength, but in terms of strategy this weekend, because it's a new track, we don't know how much the tyres are going to degrade. Of course, the tyres that they brought this weekend, Pirelli, are the 3 softest compounds, so maybe they'll degrade a lot quicker than expected. I think Pirelli are probably expecting a one-stop race, but again, we don't know until the cars actually get out there and they start collecting data as to how the tires are performing and whether there is overheating or a big, drop off, in a stint. We just don't know yet. But I am on that similar wavelength of what you're on with, teams like Haas and Ferrari. Yeah, possibly won't suffer with overheating tires as much because of the lower temperatures. But we need to actually wait and see first, I think, properly say whether that's something that is legitimately happening. Nuria says Max is so done with all the Vegas marketing, it's hilarious. I mean, if I was a driver, I would be as well. I find it just way too over the top. Sparky Pete says Monaco is not about what happens on track 2. It's only about history. How long have we been coming there? Where quality is more important than the race with no overtakes. It's about the show there too. I see what you mean, but I disagree. Because with Monaco, yeah, the history, it does play quite a big role in the the holding of the event, but the main attraction for the Monaco Grand Prix is qualifying, which happens on track. When with this Grand Prix in Vegas, I don't think necessarily there is, a proper attraction for, say, casual or new viewers to Formula One to be seen around this particular track. So I wouldn't quite agree with that, but I do see where you're coming from. And it is, yeah, I mean, with all street circuits, it's about the show to a certain extent because you are in a very busy place and you're marketing towards, a much bigger group of people than you would be normally, especially when you're racing around massive cities. But I think with Monaco, it's a lot less about the show, in terms of the off track stuff. And I know people will say no, that's not true because all the drivers, they'll be doing all the sponsorship things, but I don't think those um sponsorship events, I don't think that's what we really count as the show when it comes to Formula One. So yeah. Um Sparky Pete says F1 is for the fans more, less for the 20 drivers. Well, the fans, there is no F1. One thing I do want to say as well is we have to remember, and I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that they shouldn't be doing any sort of special anything ever for any Grand Prix, and they should just pretend like every race is just a race and that's it. No, if you're going to run a successful company, you have to balance things out. You know, for example, if you look at Liberty Media, marketing wise, I think they do a very good job with Formula One. But again, I think they do it to the point where it's harming the product. And I think the problem with Liberty is they haven't quite struck a balance between doing things for the show to market Formula One to a newer audience and it not affecting the product too much in a obviously negative way. And I think that is the issue. Um, and maybe they'll get better at it. I don't think they will, but that's the core issue, I would say. uh, McLaren from races. Oh no, Kaz, have you been politically ranting on Twitter again? The 30-day bans I've had on Facebook, lol. I haven't. The only posts I ever did on Twitter were me posting links for the stream, but maybe that was why I got banned. But to be honest, I'm not. I was at the time this morning when I found out I was suspended from Twitter. I found out that Twitter were not going to unban my account, like my appeal. Once I probably thought about it, I've calmed down quite a lot because when, and obviously we can't view it anymore, but the impressions my tweets would get were not that much. And I don't think in terms of the viewership of my streams made as much of a difference as really people would think. So I don't think it's going to affect the channel that much, if I'm being honest. And I actually get much more, say, impressions in other or on other websites, to be honest. So yeah, it's a shame, but it's not the end of the world. Definitely not the end of the world. Uh, McLaren for races deep down, Chaz. Are you looking forward to Vegas? The Razzmatazz. I don't know why I said it like that. And the racing spectacle, or the fact it might fall on its face. With varying factors, have Liberty gone too far? I'm looking forward to finding out what this track is all about. In terms of the whole, the Vegas, the look, the aesthetic, all of that, I'm not really too bothered about that. Um, I'm not really super into that whole thing when it comes to Grand Prix. I mean, yeah, certain Grand Prix taking place in certain cities or whatever is going to make it maybe look a bit nicer or cooler, but for me that doesn't really matter. What I really care about is the track and whether it will be good enough for us to have an exciting weekend. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what this track has to offer, because even though I don't have a good feeling about this track, we don't know what's going to happen. iFlick says, enjoy this Vegas Grand Prix. You will absolutely never see another. Well, I know that the locally in Vegas, it's not very popular, this event. So we'll see how well the first running of it goes. Perpetual says, I swear that the opening ceremony was like a Super Bowl halftime show. I don't mind it, but it was too cringe if I'm honest. From what I saw, like a couple small clips. Again, I've not seen the whole proper thing, and I'm not sure if I want to be honest. But from the brief bit I saw, it looked over the top, especially considering it's not like this ceremony. It's not like it took place before the race. This is before the weekend had even started. So I think it was, yeah, definitely over the top. And yeah, just I'm going to throw this comparison out there. I don't know if anyone is gonna see this comparison in the same way I do, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Do you guys, do any of you guys watch a TV? What's that? It's not really a TV show, is it? A series on Amazon Prime called The Boys. It's a very popular series. I've watched it, and yeah, it's funny as hell. But those introductions, they kind of reminded me of like the stuff that series takes the piss out of in terms of American culture. So yeah, when I saw that, I don't know why, I just thought of that thought of that show. Because again, that show, it does take the piss out of a lot of like cultural things with America and a lot of the like superhero film culture as well. And for some reason, it just reminded me of like you know, something that would be in that show. Elijah says, I live in Vegas and my wife works on the strip and I couldn't be more excited for the race. Good to hear. Hopefully your bank account, you are properly attending the race. Hopefully your bank account is not going to suffer too much. Fuck you, Pete, saying your Twitter suspension is so ridiculous. It is, but yeah. Overall, coming to think of it, it's not too. I don't think it's as bad necessarily as I was originally thinking. Maria says The Boys is amazing. Yes, it's a great show. I need to watch the spin-off show that they've done. Was it Gen V? I've heard it's very good. So yeah, watch that. Sparky Pete says the cold weather with the tires being cold might be great. I think you're trying to say, especially in a year where we know Max will win every normal race, the variables may be needed. True. We don't know ultimately this, very low track temperature. We don't know what it's going to do to the performance of the cars. So yeah, who knows? Talking of the performance of the cars, though, let me just get into the final few teams and just touch on how I think they'll do this weekend in Vegas. So let's go on to Alpine. As you can see here, a little event where Esteban Ocon was doing some rowing on looks like real water there, better than at least Miami where it was all fake. Yeah, it's weird with Alpine because obviously this is a street circuit, and if you look at a lot of the street circuit races we've had this season, Alpine have been pretty strong. But this track, the layout, it doesn't really properly suit them. The first half of the layout looks like it probably will be good, the Alpine, but the second half of it looks like it will be quite bad because of the lack of straight line speed they have. I know, of course, in Brazil, their straight line speed was good, but that was because of them cutting so much drag off the car with the setup they went for. Ultimately, their power unit is still very lacking in power. So, yeah, hard to say really where Alpine are going to be this weekend. Again, half of the track I can see them being quick. The other half I can see them being pretty slow. So we'll have to see how they do. Pierre Gasly, obviously, has been in much better form than Esteban Ocon as of late. Let's see whether he will keep that up. Williams, not been in too great form as of late. Williams, by the way, have a special livery this weekend that you will see at some point later this weekend on my stream. Pretty good special livery, I have to say. But yeah, Williams in the last couple weeks, they've not been as quick as maybe we've been expecting. They have not massively, but they have to a degree fallen off from how competitive they were mid-season. Obviously, AlphaTauri being as strong as they've been in the second half of the year has not helped that. But yeah, Williams, again, it's similar to Alpine. Half of the track, I see them being strong in. The other half, I don't see them being strong in. The only difference that it might decide that little battle between Williams and Alpine as to who is faster is I think Alpine are more likely to handle the lower track temperatures better than Williams. So we will see whether Alpine indeed can. But Williams and Alpine, I think, will be on very similar pace, and I think they'll be not too far away from the top 10. But getting into the top 10 with both cars in qualifying and having another strong weekend, in my opinion, will be AlphaTauri, who have been one of the most informed teams in the last few races. They've been scoring points on a regular basis, really, in the last, 6, 7 races, except for maybe a race here or there. They've been very, very strong. It's been obviously brilliant to see this team performing at a level that we know they were much more capable of. Because even though in the first half of the year, or the first 3 quarters of the year, they were bottom of the championship, we all knew they were better than that. It was just a case of them improving the car from the mediocre effort that it was and getting some consistency going. And thankfully, that has happened. This man on screen, Daniel Ricciardo, I think didn't he say a few years ago that he would love or dream to drive an F1 car in Vegas? Well, here is his opportunity. And with the form he's in, the confidence he has at the moment, and how good the car is, I think Daniel Ricciardo will have a strong weekend, and I think he will qualify in the top 10 and finish in the top 10 and have a strong weekend and have one of the stronger weekends for many of the drivers of Grand Prix. And I think he will be quicker than Yuki Tsunoda because of how pumped up I think Ricciardo will be for this event. But I do expect AlphaTauri to be very quick here because they have been for the last few races. They, in Mexico, of course, they were very quick. In Brazil, wasn't the greatest weekend overall. It could have been a lot better, especially if qualifying had not been as bad for them. Qualifying, I think, on Friday cost them probably what would have been a few more points in the race on the Sunday. If you look at their race pace in Brazil, it was better than Mercedes, and it was pretty good. Their pace is pretty strong, and I think, what was it? I saw an article about why that is, and the reason that is because the rear end of the car that AlphaTauri now have is basically the rear end of the car that the Red Bull has, and they will be continuing that type of shared partnership going into 2024, which is why I have a feeling that AlphaTauri are going to be one of the teams to watch out for next season. But yeah, this weekend, definitely a team to watch out for, and the dark horse, definitely for a surprise result. And then quickly, Alfa Romeo, I don't really expect them to be super quick here. Maybe Valtteri Bottas can have a decent qualifying and maybe get a couple positions away from the top 10. Pulls a really good lap out, but I don't expect anything for Alfa Romeo here. I just don't think this track is really a great track for them. Not enough corners, I would say, for this track. And then the final team we'll go into Haas F1, who, I expect They will be definitely in the race, of course, the slowest team. In qualifying, probably one of the slowest teams as well. Bit of news, though, to get into with Haas. The review they requested, the right to review they requested by the FIA for the results of the US Grand Prix was rejected because there was no relevant transformative evidence, basically submitted by Haas that could really change the scope of the, I guess, investigation. They failed with that. Another thing I wanted to get into though with Haas, well, it's not really to do with Haas, it's to do with Andretti, because we had news yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday, and it is officially confirmed that General Motors will be officially a power unit manufacturer from 2028 onwards to another manufacturer into Formula One, which is great. Now, you may be thinking, does that mean Andretti are going to be entering Formula One 2028? No. Andretti are still aiming and are still, no pun intended, powering on with the expectation that they will be on the grid either in 2025 or 2026. Of course, though, that means that they need to find someone to supply them power units until 2028, when they'll be basically, powered by General Motors, but it'll be a works deal basically there with Andretti. Now there was a deal between Andretti and Renault that was talked about a few months ago. There was talk though that maybe that deal expired. I'm sure though, given with Renault that they only supply one team and they would probably like to supply more than just themselves, I think there's a good chance that they could, if that deal for whatever reason is not as secure as it was months ago, I'm sure they can get that together and get that deal secured. So in terms of Andretti getting onto the grid, that is positive news. Very positive news. And an 11th Formula One team, guys. It's coming. It's coming. It is coming. Hopefully for 2025, which is not as far away as you think. But guys, that is it for my weekend preview. Let me just quickly go into the results of this poll, where I asked you guys who will most likely challenge Red Bull at this weekend's inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix. 55 votes, and you guys voted for Ferrari with 43% of the vote. McLaren second, Mercedes third, and Aston Martin in fourth. Thank you guys for voting in that poll. Again, a reminder, I will, in how many hours from now? I think 7 hours time from now, I will be live at 4:15 a.m. UK time to watch along the first ever session in Las Vegas. So make sure to join me for that. Of course, if you are in North America, would be great if you guys could join me for that. And I'll be live from 4:15 a.m. UK time until 5:45. And then I'll be live a couple hours later at 7:45 a.m. UK time for the practice 2 watch along in Las Vegas until 9:15. And then after that, guys, I'll be live again on Friday night, this time tomorrow, for the qualifying preview for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, where we'll go through all of the data really from the practice sessions and look at how the general pace is looking going into qualifying. And then on Saturday morning, we'll be doing a practice 3 watch along and qualifying watch along. And then on Sunday, of course, the race watch along, where I'll be joined by Niblo, my co-commentator. Of course, great timing this Grand Prix for him. So yeah, plenty of content coming your way in the next couple days. Make sure to join for all of that. Would be great if you could. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Make sure to as well smash a like button before you go. It does help the channel grow with the algorithm, and it does help in terms of my understanding as to whether you guys actually enjoy the content or not. So yeah, make sure to smash a like button, and as well, make sure to join my Discord server if you want to keep up to date with the ongoings of the channel, where in that server I post links to my stream, a great place for notifications for my streams, my videos, and also notifications for content updates that I do semi-regularly. So if you want those, the Discord server, a link below, there is in the description. But guys, until the practice one watch along in a few hours' time, make sure to join for that, for the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chancer HD. Goodbye.